Hey, hello, and howdy. Welcome to episode 2 of Tenanting Well. And I'm glad you joined. And what we're doing with Tenanting Well is diving into some background, some tax, some tactics and hacks, and all these things that can come into being an excellent tenant. Because what I find in my interactions with folks and many other people that I get to interact with, both on both sides of the spectrum, both landlords and tenants, is that the key to success in the broader context of life is focusing on excellence at every stage. And being a tenant is a stage for some people, it's a choice and a reason for others. You've got some of the most broadly successful people in the world who choose to live in apartment complexes. You've got people who are literally like brilliant beyond any understanding who choose to rent a house instead of buy it. You've got people who have been lifelong homeowners who will sell and rent for the last 20 years of their life. There's people that spend the middle part of their life as tenants. It is not a relegation or a failure, as I so often hear people speaking to, like, well, I rent, I haven't. It's like, what do you mean, well, I rent? Like, it doesn't make sense. That doesn't mean anything. Like, it's not a failure. It is a choice. And for some, it's a season. For others, it's a reason. So we want to be excellent at everything that we do. And because it's such a underserved and unknown subject, I want to unpack it. I want to apply excellence and diligence and explore it together. And today what we're going to talk about is the broader context and how it impacts our lives and our responses and interactions with each other. In this current moment of August 28th, 2020, the year of our COVID, what I experience on a daily basis is continual frustration with delays. And absolutely makes sense. Let me unpack a couple different examples of how I see this play out with delays, and then let's unpack the broader context. So, property one has a stove that malfunctioned. So very quickly we got a appliance repair person out. They informed us that the part that's broken isn't made anymore. It will be exorbitantly expensive and very slow to rebuild it from scratch. And so we made the decision to purchase a new one. So we go to a major appliance retailer in the metro. We order. It takes 5 days of back and forth to get a plan in place to install a new stove. By that 5th day, available for the next week. So it's going to be 8 days from now. So we're talking about a total of 12 days. So we say, okay, that's not good. We're dealing with no inventory. We're dealing with no tenant does not have a store, so that's not going to work. So we go to another much larger retailer, and they say, hey, here's this one in stock. This suits your needs. It's in stock. I can have it delivered tomorrow morning between 8 a.m. and noon. Like, okay, that checks the boxes. Let's do it. So we purchase it. 8 a.m. rolls around, no dice. Noon rolls around, no dice. Landlord, property manager walks into a meeting. There is a call from a driver at 1:40 p.m. that goes straight to voicemail because meetings, and it says, hey, we're 20 minutes out with the stove. So doesn't get answered. They show up. The gates are locked, so they can't drop it off. So no dice. It goes back to the store. The following day, landlord calls the retailer and says, hey, we need to get that back out. They say, we don't have an availability on any delivery truck until next week. That's not going to work. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Tomorrow rolls around, and the store can't find it. So tomorrow night rolls around. Landlord speaks with store owner to find the stove. Store owner looks in the back. It's there. It's ready for delivery. We don't have an availability for delivery for 2 weeks. We're like, yeah, no problem. I'm gonna come pick it up tomorrow. Tomorrow rolls around. You go to pick it up, and they don't have that. It's due on back order. What the heck are you talking about? It was in stock. It was right there. That's the reason we canceled the other order to go with you. And now you're saying that you sold me something that you said you had in stock. You walked back and you checked in stock. You verified that, and then you lost it or sold it, and you're telling me that there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so that's one. So what we see is that unless we understand, so take the tenant. There's a couple pieces here. There's the tenant, there's the landlord, there's the retailer, and then there's other parts, but we'll just consider tenant, landlord, retailer. If the tenant doesn't understand the broader context in which things are operating, then it would be very easy and understandable and completely justified to be very frustrated, very dejected, and to suspect malice or maltreatment from. But that would be foolish and limited and ignorant of broad it, or if you weren't given it, then you might jump to conclusions and act based on assumptions that are naive or not. Similarly, the landlord. If the landlord doesn't understand that, basically how COVID has impacted the economics, that people try to hedge their bets or offset risks, so they shut down factories, and then warehouses, who are like middlemen, like wholesalers, they tried to reduce their risk by not having a ton of stock on hand, and everybody's just trying to reduce their risks. And so 6 months later, what we have is orders through the roof. Delivery systems can't get people to show up to work to do the installs, the deliveries and the installs. The warehouses can't get people to show up to put the stinking appliances on the trucks. The retailer can't get someone to update their system. So every time you want to check on something being in inventory, they walk to the back. And it takes, I know, because I've typed it like 5 times this week, it takes 12 to 14 minutes round trip. And check this out. We're looking at 2 months before a refrigerator is available. We're talking over a year for some items. If you want something in white, or if you need something in white, forget about it, because manufacturers aren't making them. Like literally, they're just not. So if the landlord doesn't understand that, they might think this is, you might blow up 5 relationships with 5 different retailers and think they're all lying to you. They're not. Lowe's is lying to you when they say they have it in stock and blah, 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 because something was not true. Either the person I talked to last night didn't see it in the back, or they sold it and they're not eating crow and admitting that they made a mistake and putting money behind that. I'm sorry, or whatever. But if we don't understand the broader context, we might not be able to respond appropriately. The retailer, a very clear explanation was given by a landlord that a tenant is without stove, needs a stove. I came to you, retailer, because you have a stove in stock. Clear explanation. But if the retailer doesn't embrace and understand that broader context, they might think of it as a frivolous purchase or a not urgent purchase. And they might say something like, well, you've got a stove. This is a nice new one, but you got one. So, hey, sorry, it didn't make it on the truck today. Or, hey, sorry, we lost that one, or whatever. And so we'll get it to you next week. I'm like, why do you think that's okay? Like, what? But if you don't understand the context, or if you don't have a brain and think, or if you don't empathize, then you might act in a way that is either insulting, frustrating, or ignorant. So it's not just the tenant, it's not just the landlord, it's not just the retailer. It's literally all of us need to understand the broader context and let that inform and many times mitigate or buffer our responses. But so clearly, what we see in landlord-tenant relationships is that a failure to understand the broader context of actions, of inactions, of reactions, failure to understand the broader context can make us act in ways that are negligent, ignorant, or flat out offensive. And when we burn favor, when we lose credibility with people for no reason, it is so difficult to gain back. Y'all, it is a lifelong and long-suffering journey to build trust and to build credibility and rapport, and it can be burned in a few seconds. For more on that, I would highly recommend reading The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. I take so much of my personal life learning and my personal journey from that book. It is so informative and constructive, and I would recommend it even more highly than watching it. Way more highly, actually. So the biggest takeaway, the nugget that I want you to walk away with is before you form your thoughts, and this is crazy because this requires an inner dialogue and an internal narrative that is so uncommon, but you can do it. That you're watching this because you're interested in being excellent in a stage or a choice in life that so many people look at and just say, well, that's just it's like a bridge. It's just what you're going through or going to get to something else, but it's unimportant, so we're not going to focus on it. Yet we react out of a ignorance most of the time, or a presupposition of how things should be, and we react and interact with people in such a way that is flat out wrong, ignorant, or offensive. And when we do that, we take a match, we throw it, and we burn the situation. So with that, if we can dig in and learn the broader context before we react or interact or act, we will act in so much more wisdom. We will gain favor. We will gain trust infinitely faster. And when we don't know what we don't know, you can always open the box. You can open Pandora's box and lay bare the treasures of life by asking questions. Like, for example, that tenant, had they asked landlord, hey, we noticed that it's taking a long time. What are the factors leading to it taking a long time? And they would have extended trust to the landlord. The landlord can explain, hey, all of the retailers are on a massive inventory shortage. So I went to buy one that's in stock. They lost it. They couldn't deliver it the day because the gates were locked. They delivered late. They got there late. The gates were locked. They took it back to the store. They lost it or sold it to someone else. Now they're lying to me, and I'm doing everything I can. But the tendency will be to presuppose, to act based on that, to mistrust, and you see how the whole system just doesn't work like that. And then how does the landlord act when they are being assumed to be negligent or malicious or those things? Low trust begets low trust usually. So systemic failure. Another situation, we've got tenants looking to move into properties. They say, hey, we don't have a refrigerator. We'd love to move into a house and get a refrigerator. We just went to Lowe's, and Lowe's said it's going to be 2 months before they have a refrigerator. So can you get a refrigerator? And then the landlord's like, sure, thinking, yeah, how hard can it be? Lowe's is filled with refrigerators, or whatever, Home Depot, Metro, like all these stores. They're filled with refrigerators, so I'll just go pick them up. Repeat the exact same scenario I just had. And what's happening? Like, it's just, if everyone fails to understand the broader context, we will act out of ignorance, out of frustration, or something else, no bueno. And then the same thing happens with every trade, every labor-based thing, even communication. It's all just unprecedentedly weird right now. And if we will work to understand that and to extend dignity, honor, and kindness to one another, we will get the best out of one another. And so what I want to encourage you to is seek to understand the broader context. If you don't understand it, or if you don't even know what you need to understand, ask questions. Ask them out of respect, out of care, and deference to the landlord, because you can bet, or just assume, even if it's wrong, I think you'll get more out of this assumption, but assume that your landlord or your property manager, whoever you're dealing with, they know more about landlording than you do. They know more about interacting with tenants, or they know more about how to handle maintenance requests, or whatever it is, like, than you do, and defer to them as the authority and seek knowledge. Like, we used to do this. Like, people would go and they would like spend their life wanting the ear of the king, and then they would like go into the king's court and they would have like their one question. And it was what you tell your grandkids about. Like, one time your grandpappy got to go up and ask the king a question. We didn't speak with that accent in monarchy countries at the time, but like, that was a thing. We got to defer to authority. someone that knows more. Yet I deal with people every day who tell me how to landlord. You don't know more than I do about landlording. It's a freaking fact. If you did, if that was a case, that would be ludicrous. If you sat in a doctor's office and knew more about doctoring than the person that went to school, training, and application for it, that would be a weird system. Same thing landlording. Yes, you have some jokes, you have some jacks of all trades, you have some people who own a rental property or manage a unit and they've got a title and they are not excellent at their craft. And then, so yeah, they suck. But I think you'll get more out of life in all areas if you assume the best and if you assume authority and good things of the other people and you act based on that. Let those people prove otherwise. Give them that dignity and let them prove otherwise before you treat them as though they don't have that. All right. Fraser out. Let's tenant well together. Let's landlord well. Let's do life well. Because when we do things well, it's more fun and we get more out of everything.